My name is José María Medina and belong to the Ramón Areces Foundation as a scientific advisor. I would like to welcome all of you to this webinar that we have organized together with the Spanish Society of Biochemistry and Molecular Biology. This session was framed in a long collaboration with the Spanish Society of Biochemistry and Molecular Biology in the organization of meetings, symposia, and online seminars like this. I would like to convey the thanks of Ramón Areces Foundation to all of you for attending this meeting. With your attention to it, you help us to pursue our main goal, that is to promote the science in Spain. Today's session is devoted to personalized medicine, the future from the idea to the product. That has been organized by Dr. Monsalve, from the Institute of Biochemical Research Alberto Sol of the National Research Council of Spain and Autonomous University of Madrid. She is a specialist in metabolic diseases, particularly in the development of pharmacology tools for their treatment. Now, I give the floor to Dr. Monsalve to conduct the meeting. But before, I want to thank all of you very much for attending this meeting. Thank you very much indeed.
Hello, everyone. My name is María Monsalve. First, I want to welcome you to this conference sponsored by the Fundación Ramón Areces in collaboration with the Spanish Society for Biochemistry and Molecular Biology. It is also my pleasure to welcome the speakers, Enrique Samper and Michael Tadros. Thank you very much for being here. And let me just briefly introduce the topic we are going to talk about today. Personalized medicine, the future from the idea to the product. So as you know, one of our great challenges in the society nowadays is to adjust the therapies to the patient so that we really cope with the needs of the subjects. And to do that, we need to really understand the molecular mechanisms that are behind the diseases, and also the responses that these patients have to the therapies that we can provide. And so what we have to do is to get the knowledge, and once we get it, transform that into a product that can really reach the patients and the clinicians. So that's why we need a very strong and close collaboration between the basic researchers and the companies that promote innovation, as well as with the political and economic agents of our society. So we know that we can do it because we have already done it, and as you know, there are already some examples of successful approaches. For example, for rare diseases and cancer, where the molecular diagnostics and personalized medicine approaches have been successful. But we need to further extend the concept into more diseases. So now we are going to have some short presentations from our speakers today. The first one is going to be Enrique Samper. Enrique Samper is CEO, Chief Executive Officer of NIMGenetics, a company of which he also was a founder back in the year 2011. Is that correct? No, 2008.
2008.
Sorry, okay. Enrique studied biology, then he got in the United States, then he got a PhD in Madrid at the Autónoma University, working with Dr. María Blasco. He was already working on DNA, cancer, and aging. Then he moved on to do a postdoctoral stage in the United States, where he kept on studying chromosomal stability, stress, and cellular senescence. Then he came back to Spain, where he worked as a Ramon y Cajal Fellow at the CNB and then the CENIC here in Madrid, studying where he started working as a principal investigator in mesenchymal stem cells and DNA repair. And then finally, after launching the NIMGenetics company that is focused on genetic analysis and developing of genetic tools, he decided to get trained in business development, and he is working as CEO from 2011 of this company, and what is what he's going to talk about.
Thank you. Introduction, very kind of you.
So please go ahead.
So it's my pleasure to be here today. I want to thank, first of all, the Ramón Areces Foundation. I want to thank María Monsalve and for the opportunity to be here. It's always a pleasure to be invited to speak about what one does, and in the case of today, I'm going to speak about the company that I co-founded in 2008, which is called NIMGenetics. It's from zero to a scale-up in genetic diagnosis. The second thanks are going to go to all those people that I had the fortune to work with in all the academic institutions, from my PhD, my postdoctoral, and further training, which is the basis of this company, the genetic knowledge that we have. I'm just part of that knowledge, but I want to thank all the people that have definitely trained me and introduced me to this fascinating world. The idea of NIMGenetics started when I was a postdoctoral fellow in San Francisco in an institute called the Bach Institute for Aging Research, which is specifically devoted to the study of aging and aging-related diseases. As you may know, about 5% of the population today is born with a genetic syndrome, and there's a long diagnostic journey that in many cases it takes about 7 years from the very onset of the symptoms to diagnosis. And there is about 6,000 genetic syndromes known today, and many of those are currently not diagnosed or not well known. So with this genetic knowledge, in the year 2007, I got together with another group of scientists that worked in the CNIO at the time and proposed them the idea of forming a new startup dedicated to the study of the genome for clinical genetic diagnosis. At the time, we didn't know much about business, so we had some beginning introductions to the business world from the IE Business School and the Fundación Madrid+D that helped us put together the first business plan. In 2008, we got together, the three main scientists, a couple of highly specialized people in the laboratory, and 4 friends and family that acted as advisors and very early on investors, the so-called family, friends, and fools. Okay? So we put 110,000 euros of our own money, and we started looking for further funding from the CDTI, the CDT, and we got fortunate enough to get the Neotech project to specifically design one specific product for diagnosis of genetic disease. As you know, being scientists, the genome is highly complex. Okay? There's many things we don't know today, we didn't know then about the genome, but one of the things that we do know is that about 1.5% of that genome encodes what's called the exomes. Those are all of the genes that encode later on RNA and protein to do the functions in the cell. So about 98% of the genome does not code for these mRNA or proteins. Okay. So we started in September 11 2008. That was the foundation day. And just a few days after, September 15th of 2008, the financial crisis broke in the United States with Lehman Brothers. So it was a really hard time to find money, to find financing for the company. I guess these things happened, but one of the things that entrepreneurs do is find, as scientists as well in many regards, you have to find the money, you have to find the means to be able to do what you really want to do. So, and the fact that we're here today and that the company is grown a lot, it speaks, that we have this ability to overcome, whatever problems we find in the life of the company. So the first technology that we started with is called array CGH, or comparative genomic hybridization, and this is a substitute for a technology called the karyotype, in which you used to look at the chromosomes with an optical microscope, okay, to define the karyotype, the karyogram. And this allowed us, with this array CGH technology, to look at the genome at a much higher resolution, about 20 to 50 times more resolutive in the finding of chromosomal aberrations and chromosomal deletions and duplications. Okay. To the point that with this digital technology, you can find exactly, what is the deletion, what is the duplication of the genome with correct coordinates, and you can find exactly what genes are implicated in that genetic disease or in that disorder. Okay, so we can find fairly easy, specifically what genes are missing or what genes are duplicated, and this was transformational back then in 2008. Okay. The company continued growing. We started hiring, from 2 to 4, then 6, then 8 employees. By 2011, we were 8 employees. We already had revenues of about €500,000, and we had our first 2 products of the sign of NIMGenetics, which are called CaryoNIM microarrays, one for prenatal and one for postnatal diseases, including all those regions related to autism. One of the things that we learned in those 3 years is that we didn't know enough about the business world. In fact, we knew very little, so we were, again, lucky to be selected by Instituto de Empresa, IE, for a training course called Banespime Orange, in which, the founders of the company, we got a little bit of training, just a little bit of, the things that we needed to know that we obviously didn't know then. A bit about human resources, a bit about financing, about shareholders agreement, all these things that to a scientist are very foreign. Okay. Later on, I got more education in business with the Premio Emprendedor 21, which I highly recommend all entrepreneurs to apply to this. This is a very, very good training program in IESE, SADE, and even a bridge to Silicon Valley. By then, we were already 35 partners, because we had done several rounds of financing, because we didn't have money ourselves to continue with the growth of the company, so we incorporated more and more partners. We continued diversifying this platform of array CGH for familiar oncology, for regenerative medicine with, for example, the CaryoNIM stem cell or the OncoNIM familiar cancer array. Okay, so these platforms allow you to diagnose different diseases in different medical specialties. Okay. In 2013, again, we struck luck, because there was a company, a Chinese company, that came to see us. They knew that we were already targeting the prenatal diagnostic field. And they said, listen, we have this non-invasive prenatal testing technology called NIPT. And to us, that was fantastic. That was a complete breakthrough, in which you can diagnose a number of trisomies, that is a different copy number of a whole chromosome, of the fetus in development by week 12, okay, with just a simple blood test. This is called Trisonym. This is our brand. And this has been evolving again as a platform which it's been growing in capacity and diagnosing now more than 40 genetic syndromes and even microdeletions and point mutations. And this is a collaboration between BGI and NIMGenetics that started in 2013 and continues today very, very successfully. The following step that we did was go into next generation sequencing. This is again a revolution. In the study of the genome, it took about 12 years and about $1,000 million, okay, to decode the first whole human genome. And this has decreased in price tremendously, whereas today we can do it in an SME like NIMGenetics. We can sequence the 20,000 genes of the genome called the exome, and we've been doing this for the last 5 years, diagnosing more than 150 different types of genetic diseases, okay? In 2017, the growth of the company attracted a private equity, which is a specialized investment fund called Opposite Capital, coming from London, to invest 7 million euros in NIMGenetics. That was a big success to attract foreign capital to a Spanish startup, and that has been transformational in the professionalization of the company. Okay? So today we are a very different company than prior to that investment. We've professionalized the team. We have a lot of quality certifications. We do a lot of technologies, and we've done to date more than 150,000 genetic diagnoses. Okay? So, and bear in mind that each diagnosis is a family or a child in a family that has a problem that we have to attend. Today we've grown significantly. This is the merit of the team in genetic diagnosis startups or in technological startups by and large. This, you cannot do it alone. You have to do it with a team of highly dedicated individuals that I like to also thank, no? Particularly my co-founders, Sara Alvarez and Javier Suela today, and a whole set of executives, you know, that take care of business development, take care of IT, which is very important today. Marketing and sales is absolutely key for diagnosis, business, human resources, finance. There's a whole sweep of people that allow NIMGenetics as a company to grow. Today, we are over 100 people in the company. 63%, more than 63% of them are women. 70% of the workers of NIMGenetics have either a bachelor's degree in the life sciences or a master's degree or a PhD. About 15% of the company is formed by PhD people that we attract from industry and from academia. Okay, so this is an alternative career to be in academia, and people are, you know, very productive and I think very happy. We've expanded internationally. Not only we do most of our work in Spain, but we also have 3 subsidiaries in Portugal, in Brazil, and in Mexico. As I said, we are about 100 people in the company, and about 20 to 25% of the staff of NIMGenetics is dedicated to selling in a consultative selling approach to the doctors that are really our clients. Okay? So we tend to the doctors and we help the doctors diagnose their patients for any of the 6,000 genetic rare diseases that exist. We are also part of SEBBM, which is the Spanish Association for Biotechnology, and we are, you know, very happy to contribute with our experience to the field. Okay? In terms of growth, we started in 2008. That year, which was half a year, we were able to invoice only 50,000 euros. No? And little by little, we've been growing this company, you know, and today, last year, for example, we turned over 13.5 million euros in revenue. It's been a story of continuous growth of NIMGenetics, and this attracts talent, it attracts capital, and attracts technology, and with all those means, we can do very, very good genetic diagnosis with the most modern and state-of-the-art tools. Okay? So we do full genetic diagnostic service. We also implement our technologies in hospitals. We can analyze third-party data, and we can distribute today third-party products through our sales force. For example, in COVID, I was just speaking previously with Maria about the importance that these companies have in helping society bring in products that are needed for diagnosis. No? And that is just one example. So we are active in obstetrics, in oncology, in pediatrics, in neurology, but also in R&D services, which is a very highly promising area for NIMGenetics. We do CRISPR analysis, we do DNA encoded libraries, we do mRNA transcription studies with RNA-seq. So we diversify from the clinical services, that's our main core business, to also R&D services, to a lot of research and development centers. We have collaborations. We had a collaboration with Maria, and we thank her for that. We train people, we train PhDs. So it's a mixture of industry and academia, but in a company setting. As I said, the investment by our private equity fund has allowed to gain and buy the highest and most modern technology for genetic sequencing today. In this case, Illumina with the NovaSeq 6000 machine, which is the highest and the most potent sequencer today in the world, and that allows us to do many things and stay abreast of the field and be one of the top laboratories in Spain. Lastly, I also want to thank all my collaborators in the R&D field, in the research and development centers. We work with SEBBM, we work with CSIC, with CMB, with STANIC, with many other academic centers, that it's absolutely key to stay in touch with the academic centers, with the academic group leaders that are at the very forefront of technology, and it's really a fundamental thing for us. Okay, so with that, I want to thank all of you for your attention. I want to thank the organizers of this conference. I'm very happy to be here. I want to thank the patients, I want to thank the doctors, and I want to thank, of course, all of the team of NIMGenetics, without whom this wouldn't be possible. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Enrique. That was a very nice presentation. We will have the discussion at the end. Now it's time for our next speaker, Dr. Michael Tadros. Michael is currently Senior Manager of the Botín Foundation Science Department. As you know, the Foundation invests in early biomedical developments of promising life science discoveries across a range of technologies and therapeutic areas. Michael graduated from Concordia University in Canada, where he worked on he studied cellular molecular biology. Then he also got some training in economics and business. And he got his PhD here in Spain at the Universidad Autónoma de Madrid, working at the CNB, Center for Biotechnology, National Center for Biotechnology, where he worked in microbiology, micromolecular biology. Michael currently is also advisor, expert, and jury of several government organizations in Canada, United States, and also provides a mentorship for startups. And he also currently serves as executive at a biotech gene therapy company. He is passionate about life sciences and especially about bridging the capabilities for profit, non-profit, and academic sectors, aiming to speed up development into effective treatments. Please, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Maria, for the very warm introduction. I, too, would like to thank the Fundación Ramón Areces for inviting me and having me here today, and to be amongst really such a wonderful panel. I think we've crossed each other, Enrique and I, many times in the past, and I've been able to witness the growth of NIMGenetics, so I'm really happy to see that it's evolved the way it has, and I feel humbled sharing the stage with Enrique and with Maria as well.
Please don't say that.
So yeah, thank you for having me. Great. So jumping right in, I was truly inspired by the title of today's talk, which is From Idea to Products. Before getting there, just for a quick overview, it is true when you look at different countries and how they're doing in terms of publications from researchers, there is some sort of a relationship between the amount of high-impact publications, research publications, and a country's prosperity when measured by GDP. It's not to say, however, that because of great science, you have great incomes and great social impact. There's something missing that makes research go to a successful business. And so what is that missing factor? And really what it comes down to at the end is that research is the basis, it's the fundamentals, but at the end of the day, you need some sort of diffusion. Something has to happen from the lab to reach a socio-economic impact. And diffusion really is defined as researchers and professors teach students. These students are eventually hired by industry, or they consult industry, or they start up new companies, and this somehow facilitates technology transfer. And that's really it sounds simple, but at the end of the day, it's quite difficult, this diffusion factor. And there is proof that technology transfer functions, and here's a very quick list of actually outdated data with regards to universities in the US, demonstrating that they could actually commercialize and monetize on research. But in reality, when we look at how much money is being put into research and the output in terms of startups, there is no clear correlation. And as a matter of fact, these are a few quotes, but at the end of the day, if we're looking at the US, for example, the majority of the universities are not able to monetize, and some of them can't even pay their technology transfer staff. So it is a huge challenge, and I think it's a challenge that's not only here in Spain, but it's a global challenge of how to really take advantage of knowledge and research and bring that to the patient and to the market, hence the idea to product. So how do we do this? And I'd like to take this opportunity, being a manager at the Botín Foundation Science Department, to just briefly explain a little bit of our experience. We currently have two programs. One of the programs is called the Technology Transfer Program, and what we did is we had selected 29 researchers nationwide throughout Spain, throughout 17 research institutions and hospitals and so forth. And throughout 5 years, what we did is work with them very intimately and provide them with resources, all with the objective of technology transfer. And really, we saw tons of different inventions come out, ranging from therapeutic tools, research tools, prognosis and diagnostic tools, and including, obviously, personalized medicine. Just to go over very lightly, we have certain success stories, which we're very proud of. The next program is the Mind the Gap program, and the idea here is really to attract and accelerate proof of concept projects. And what this is basically is a very early phase investment to try to stimulate the creation of startups and help them overcome those first hurdles when a startup exists, which my colleagues here know very well. Again, we have a very humble but healthy portfolio at the moment, and some of which focus also on personalized medicine. So what I would like to do now is really focusing on the audience and the researchers, is share with you a little bit of lessons learned, which I've humbly experienced, and I'd like to be able to share that with the audience today. So when you think personalized medicine, at the end of the day, it's about providing the most suitable medicines at the right dose, to the right person, the right time, and at a reasonable cost. And so the first lesson learned is really, do you know your customer? Now, when you think about it, whoever purchases anything really is the decision maker, the user, and the payer, right? If you want to buy a phone or a computer, you pay for it, you decide to buy it, and you use it at the end of the day. And I'm sure you've seen this many times, but I really want to emphasize the message here. When it comes to the health sector, it's completely different. The person that buys the product is one entity. The person that uses it is usually the patient. And the one that decides to use it is usually the physician or the clinician, right? And you're the inventor. And so this is actually quite complex. And so just to give you an example, this is an image of a table of 4 people having lunch or dinner, and you have to decide amongst all of them. And the key message here really is that you want to make sure that your invention and future product will appeal to each one of these stakeholders. They have to be able, in their own way, to understand the value that you're providing to them. So let's dig into that one by one very quickly. Do you really know your customer? What about the patient? As a researcher, and I've seen this very often, do you actually know a patient, or do you know a group of patients? Are you in contact with patient associations? Do you really understand the epidemiology and the etiology of the disease? Can you clearly define the unmet need? What is happening exactly to the patient? What do they need, right? Can you characterize the cohort in the population? Is your personalized medicine device or product going to give a solution to all patients, a certain cohort of the patient, and why is that? You have to be able to explain that very, very succinctly. Are you able to define the benefit for the patient? And the best way really to do this is to make a very short and succinct graph of what is the current clinical protocol for those patients. What's the decision framework? And where is it exactly that your personalized medicine going to have an impact on the clinical protocol? And why is that going to be of value to the patient? Okay. The next stakeholder is the physician, the clinician, and I really want to encourage anyone who's willing or thinking of endeavoring in developing their personalized medicine invention or product is to really rub shoulders with the clinicians. They're the ones that are really in touch with the patients. They're the ones that at the end of the day are going to decide whether or not they should be using your product towards the patients. So really, do you know some? Have you spoken to them? Do they represent the target patient population that you are really aiming to provide a solution for? What is the degree of interaction you have with them? Do you understand how your product will be good for the clinician? Not only the patient, but how it's going to solve the clinician's problems as well. Why would they want to use your product? Where is it that they see value in your product? And can they, at one point, and this is really important in future development, actually collaborate with you as a key opinion leader or for clinical phase or validation and so forth. Moving on to the payer. So again, there's different stakeholders, and you also have to have in mind how are you going to monetize it? Who's going to pay for it? And this could really vary between different kinds of personalized medicine. So you really have to start understanding where's the geographical location of your target patient population. Are they spread throughout Europe? Is it global? Is there more in the US than in Canada? And why is that? And not only where are they, but how do clinical protocols apply in each one of those countries? Because in some countries it might be different than others, and you want to make sure that your product is actually going to have a benefit or it's going to be used where you want to sell it. So I really encourage you to look into that as soon as possible so that you could have an idea of where your product could be marketed in the future. Now I understand I'm putting a load of work towards the researcher, and we'll talk about this after, but at one point you really have to start considering the team. I mean, a researcher could really do certain amounts of work, but then you have to diversify, and I think Enrique made emphasis towards this, why team is important. You have to professionalize your team. Another important factor is your commercial rights. And this is something that I think is most research institutions and hospitals in Spain are aware of. It's the IP factor, whether there's a patent behind it. You have to be able to understand at least whether you have certain rights to sell your product and whether you're going to need to license in additional intellectual property for you to be able to commercialize it where you want to commercialize it. And so the second lesson learned is, do you know what needs to be done to develop your product, right? So unless you could demonstrate certain track record that you've done it before, the answer is no. You could only go so far in your laboratory. And it's the next worst thing you could actually say is, well, give me the monies and the funds and I'll develop it in my lab. So right off the bat, funders will usually not see a lot of credibility in those statements. And the worst thing you could do really is try to exaggerate costs so that you could have more incomes for your lab. And people usually, they identify that very early on. So you want to be humble and honest. This is what I know how to do. This is how far I can get. And I realize that I'm going to have to externalize some things in the future to enable the product to reach the market. So history has proven over time that great things are only done through joint efforts. And so what you really need is an experienced team. And the team is assessed on its capacity to execute the project. And this is in terms of development and reaching market. And this is something you have to really have mentally accepted to be able to somehow facilitate the transition of your invention from the lab towards the market. So again, the product cannot be developed in your lab. It has to be externalized. And you probably have limited funds. And you're going to have to hire top management at one point. And for this, it's extremely important, to recognize that you're going to need help. And the help comes from your team. Again, moving on with what needs to be done to develop your product. So you might not have the track record, per se, in developing these products, but at least start having a guesstimate of what could be needed. And you could Google this, literally. You could find out whether there are other similar products that had to undergo similar developments, what were the key experiments that they had to do to demonstrate that it works. It's also interesting if you're knowledgeable about investments that were done in your field or in personalized medicine or something that's quite related to your product, so that you could understand at least the dimensions of the monies you're going to have to use to be able to develop this as you progress. And to start also looking into regulatory pathway. And again, you could search on this online, look at other products that are quite similar, understand what kind of regulatory roadmaps that they used, and to have a feeling of how things go in the future. At least it makes you look more knowledgeable. Lesson learned number 3 really is who owns your product. And it touches the intellectual property component that I mentioned earlier, but really it goes down to the genesis of your personalized medicine. How did it get to where it is right now? And you have to start looking backwards and working backwards. Did you get grants to develop this, or certain monies? Did you sign any contracts that might limit its commercialization? Did you incorporate knowledge that is not necessarily yours? Did you incorporate material? It could be a plasmid, it could be a mouse model. Did you sign MTAs? Those are extremely, extremely important details. A lot of people tend to oversee them, and it could have a huge impact on commercialization in the future. So this is all part of your due diligence, and it basically allows you to move and progress more securely when you're talking to funders and VCs, for example. Likewise, if you've collaborated with other researchers, did you sign collaboration agreements? Go over the terms, because it might limit your capacity to commercialize this in the future. And again, intellectual property and patents. Did you look into protecting your intellectual property? If you have, do you have a study that was issued? If you have a patent that's been solicited, at least demonstrate that you have maybe written opinions that demonstrates the health and the status of the IP that you have. And do you know whether your future business will need to license in additional technology? So just to provide you with a recap, and this is the last slide, and I'll leave it here. Understanding what you have will make it extremely important, especially if you understand how it adds value to each of the different stakeholders. At the end of the day, and I think Enrique emphasized this a lot, it is a long journey, and it's really about managing relationships, and you have to rub shoulders with different stakeholders to understand what they need and how your product could add value. And when you think about your invention, don't think about the research necessarily, but think about performance. What does it perform to the different clients that we mentioned earlier? how does it solve a problem that they have specifically, okay? And how does it outperform potential competition? And really, once you know all this, it'll really help you provide a compelling story to support your projects when you're looking for funders and your business in the future. So that's what I had to share with you today. And again, thank you very much. I'm really honored to be here, and I'm available if you have any questions at any time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael. So maybe we can start commenting. I'm very interested in what you are doing, but I always think that like when they tell you, when you are working in basic research, as I am doing, okay, the first thing that you want in your life is to make your research, useful, right? Everybody, when you start studying, you want to be of help. You want to find the new development that will cure somebody or help somebody. So that aim is within each researcher in biomedicine, really. But when it comes to, well, I am gonna go to the market, right? There has always been a big gap, right? It's true that the gap is closing, and I can see that all the actors that you mentioned are getting closer. There are more and more there is money available, grants that are specifically addressing that issue, right? But still, I see that it's like a big jump that many people don't feel courageous enough to do, okay? And I feel that the key is the working, like the effective work that you were mentioning, where you actually put together the scientists side by side with the people that really knows the business. And I can see from your two experiences that you can do that in the lab or in the company itself, okay? So how do you see that? How is it evolving? How is it working? How will we look at the future in this regard?
Michael, would you like to go first?
Yeah, thank you, Enrique. I think you're much more capacitated. If I may just humbly say, I completely agree with you. I think it's a question of getting out of the lab. I understand researchers have this want to provide to society, but at the end of the day, if you're not in touch with the people that are going to be using the technology, then you might be developing something without being in touch with the end user. So really the communication and the rubbing shoulders with the end users and the payers and the patients, I think is critical, because at the end of the day, they're going to define the need and whether it's worthwhile. So yeah, that being said, I'm sorry, Enrique. Yeah,
I absolutely agree with you, Michael. I think that the basic researcher sometimes falls in love with their assay, with their concept, okay, that they have developed. This is like creating something from scratch, okay? And you have to really put this to the test of the market. You have to go and talk to the end user, whether it's a clinician, okay, whether it's a pharmaceutical company, or whether it's any other stakeholder that may want to use your product. In fact, today the current trend is to do iterations, okay, and create these platforms that you improve time and time again until you hit something that really meets an unmet need, okay? And you don't do this normally overnight, okay? You have to really study it, you have to see, but you have to speak to the customer. You have to speak to the person that, at least, if not the customer, the buyer, okay? You have to talk to people and say, is there a possibility, would you be interested in testing this technology, okay? In diagnostics, it's even more complex, because you need to certify, you need to go through a number of regulatory steps before that test normally can be used for a diagnosis of a patient, okay? Because there's a tremendous amount of responsibility when you diagnose a disease of a patient. I mean, you're talking to a human being. You're no longer talking to a mouse, okay? And this is something that researchers need to understand. And I think that finally, we need to get more training into the system from even early stages in your career to know, how is the process, okay? Because Maria was mentioning, there's a gap between the academia and the industry. And sometimes there's misperceptions, and sometimes there's not enough knowledge about how industry works from the academia part, even from the institutional part, okay? And this gap needs to close even further, as you were saying, Maria, very rightly. So I think that there's a number of academic business schools that are training people in specific programs tailored to researchers, so they understand. We give those people the basic knowledge, the basic facts of how to do business and what are the stages and what are the hurdles that you need to overcome to be able to in order to be at least have a chance of being successful. Okay, not being successful, but having a chance, because things are complicated. So training, I think, is for me the favorite concept in academic institutions to venture into something that can be finally commercialized.
Okay. I couldn't agree more with Enrique, and I think especially in the field of personalized medicine, it's even more so important. It's not that you're researching a mechanism of action that could cure cancer. That would be a blockbuster. But when you're looking into personalized medicine, for example, if you want to offer a service to help cancer patients understand whether they're going to have a certain need for a drug. So imagine you have a analysis that looks at a genetic signature to discard 5% of the population from using a drug. Mm-hmm. Then the payer will probably say, well, that's great, but I might as well give the drug to everybody anyways.
Right.
Where do I save money? So why should I screen 100% of the population if at the end I'm only going to discard 5%? I'm going to just give them the drug anyways, especially if it's not that invasive, right? So I think also it's not, this contact with the different stakeholders is not only important to find out and to provide solutions to society, but it can also have an impact on your research at the end of the day, because you can find out whether or not what I'm doing is actually going to solve something, or am I working in the dark at the end of the day. On a different level, personalized medicine, for me, it could also include gene therapy. So that I think that's probably one of the highest level of personalized medicine. Somebody with a specific mutation in their gene has a disease, and I could offer a gene therapy for it. Yeah, but maybe what if the patient has learned to live with it? I mean, they're born with it, and I've seen this in certain cases, and the youth at the end of the day, they think they're invincible, they're young, they've unfortunately had to suffer over the lifetime, but they've learned how to live with it. And they might get scared with the administration of this gene therapy. So maybe you have a wonderful idea, but at the end of the day, the patient feels uncomfortable. It's not the end of the world. I mean, you really have to put a lot of muscle when it comes to the marketing of the drug. So you don't find this out until you start reaching out to the patients, the clinicians, the physicians, and the payers, and the hospitals, and so forth.
Yeah. That brings me to a couple of comments. First of all, regarding education, I think there has been a lot of improvement and I think success into bringing together the educational system that joins the person that is in train having access to the companies and seeing how biotech company works, and also knowing the basic research, right? And there are actually doctorate programs, for example, that are mixed, so where the student can be working like part-time in a business, in a biotech, and part-time in a lab. So there has been a lot of improvement. But what about the other way around? I mean, what about the people that are trained in business, okay? But are ready to work in a business that is related to biomedicine, for example, knowing a bit of biomedicine, right? because, you know, I have a lot of people, I know a lot of people that has studied biology or biomedicine, right? And when they work in companies, many of those tell me, well, there is like a gap, you know, it's like on one side are the people that know about the biological problem, and on the other side are the people that know business, and it's really difficult to talk. I wonder if somebody trained in business could get a master in biotechnology, for example, right? Maybe it would not be a bad idea. Is that feasible? Maybe somebody that knows a lot about business could help build a development plan for a laboratory that wants to build up a startup. You know, is that possible?
It is possible. I know of at least one example. One of our early investors, who is an engineer, did a master's degree. Well, he's an engineer, but he's also a very successful businessman. Okay, has a company of over 800 people now doing artificial intelligence and doing a lot of things. No, and he did a master's degree in biotech. Okay. It's kind of the rare thing that you find out, you know. And I think now having been in both worlds, no, so I was a researcher for about 15 years, and I've been an entrepreneur for about 15 years. No? And the thing I find is that there is a translation problem. Okay, if you talk science to a finance person, they get lost because they don't understand the terms. And if you talk finance to a scientist, it happens exactly the same thing. Now, having been in both sides, I think it's easier, okay, to teach business to a scientist than it is to teach science to a businessman. Okay, the depth of the study of a scientist is so high. Okay, there's so much time and effort dedicated to understanding very complex things because biology is highly complex, right? That when you talk to other people that comes from other walks of life, from human resources or even sales or marketing, if they don't have that background, let's say of a bachelor's degree in biology or healthcare-related business, it's very difficult because the concepts are so many and are so deep. If you both remember, the first time we as scientists went to a immunology talk, CD40, CD23, CD9, all these concepts were so rare for us, and we got basic training. Imagine that if you had never heard of any of these terms. But this happens also the other way around. So I remember in the beginning, when we went to the first business school, and they started speaking about cash flow, EBITDA, profitability, ROIs. What are these terms? I mean, as a scientist, you don't get trained, and I think we still have a chance to improve it. Okay, I think that in Anglo-Saxon cultures and Anglo-Saxon universities, they mix these disciplines a lot more than we do here. So here, if you study biology, you study biology. You study medicine, you study medicine. But in Canada, in the US, in the UK, I think you get introduction to other subjects while you're studying the same sort of studies. And I think that would be my suggestion.
Okay.
Just if I may add on, I can agree with Enrique and Maria more. I think it does require a multidisciplinary mindset. And I think it goes beyond just business and the researcher, because when you take this to the level of the physician, you could realize, I've been looking at CD34, but maybe I should be looking at some other physical concept to really understand the patient and so forth. And then you really have to be able to grab all these messages from all these different areas and make sure that you could somehow add value. And I have to agree with the both of you in the sense that the multidisciplinarity behind it is critical. And again, nobody could be expert in everything. It's really about teamwork. And just to kudos for Canada, yeah, it's true. Back then I took the newest program. It was cell and molecular biology. That says how old I am really, but back then it was new. Mm-hmm. But you have your core classes, and then you have your electives. And maybe your electives are 30% of your classes, and they cannot have anything to do with your core classes, which is focused on cell and molecular biology. It has to be outside. And that's where you mentioned earlier I did my business clusters and so forth. So that was a long time ago. And now when I speak to the youth, they're like, oh, I'm doing my bachelor's in biotechnology. I'm like, what? That's cool. That didn't exist back in my days. And it does start incorporating, including here in Spain, different topics from social to business, regulatory, research, and I think that's really neat. Going back to what you were saying before, Maria, what I'm starting to see also more and more frequently, including in Spain, is this role of the entrepreneur in residence that are within the university or research center, and really they're kind of a part of the tech transfer office. And usually these are people like Enrique who have really an amazing track record that will visit and listen to projects, give their feedback, and try to somehow stimulate that conversation to exchange thoughts and notes and see how something could actually progress. And this is something that's becoming more and more common, including in Spain, and I think it's a huge added value both to researchers and the business folks.
All right. Thank you very much. And just one final question. How is Spain? How are we? Are we ready for the future? How is the biotech technology, the basic science, all the investors? So how is our position for the future of the, personalized medicine, the digital world?
Michael, please go.
Yeah, so since this is going to be broadcasted, we're doing amazing. Investors come. I mean, no, really, I think not only nationally but internationally, there is somehow a new movement of, or more, how could you say, that more trust in biotech, and investments are flowing in much more now than perhaps 10 or 15 years ago. And Spain is catching a lot of attention, and I think it's really because of the amazing science that's happening here. So I think it's doing very well. I think it's going in a good trajectory. There's still a lot of work to be done, that's for sure, but it is attracting attention, and I think that's grand, yeah? And I really hope to see this continue over time. But again, as I mentioned earlier, I think we have to have the projects well packaged for people to really continue investing in Spanish companies. But it is becoming a trend, and I'm really happy to see that.
Okay.
I also agree. I think that there's been a tremendous improvement in the ecosystem of entrepreneurship in the last 10 to 15 years. Yeah. There's been, in several disciplines, several cases of success, okay? And this is what attracts capital. This is what attracts attention, okay? There's still a lot of room for improvement, I would say also, no? Because Spain is full, absolutely full of talent, okay? I have no question about that. But still, there is not enough investment in our sector. I mean, in VC, in general, maybe yes, there's enough for the potential of the country, but for the life sciences, there is not enough venture or private equity funds in Spain that are dedicated to life sciences in general, okay? I think that this has tremendous potential. I think, just to speak a couple of words about what we've been living over the last 18 months with COVID, no? I think that COVID has taught us the importance, no, of healthcare and the importance of knowing, microbiology, viruses, PCR, antigens. This, before COVID, was not even imaginable, okay? So as a society, I think that we we need to build this ecosystem, and this ecosystem has many parts. It has the academic part, it has the researcher. I think we're top in there, no questions asked. Okay, there's the transfer of that knowledge to industry. I think there's a lot of room for improvement, and in early stages, financing of equity, not debt or quasi-debt, like an ISA or things like that, but equity. I think there's a lot of room for improvement. So, for example, if you take Israel, in Israel there's about 150 euros per capita invested in venture capital, okay, per year. In the United States, it's about 100, okay. In England or in Switzerland, it's 20 to 30, and in Spain, it's 2 or 3, okay. Those were maybe older statistics. It's improving, definitely improving, but I think we need to explain better the potential of this sector, the importance of this sector, that it can be exported later on to other countries. No? So I think, and this has two components. It has the investment component. We need to train investors or show investors that this can be done and this can be very successful, and that their investment helps society with some big impact, or it has the potential to do so at least. And it also has the fiscal aspects. In Spain need to favor investments in these kind of companies a lot more, okay, to promote these investments, because there's a lot of risks associated to investment in venture capital and in biotech. Huge rewards, but there's also similar risks.
Okay. Well, thank you very much again. Thank you, Enrique. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, the Fundación Ramón Areces. And, well, see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.